Northeast of Angkor Wat, deep in the jungle of northern Cambodia, lies an archaeological site that most tourists don't have on their itinerary, but perhaps they should. Koh Ker is the archaeological site of ancient Lingapura or Chokgargyar. It is a sacred urban ensemble of numerous temples and sanctuaries, including wall paintings, sculptures, and inscriptions. Constructed over a 23-year period, it was once home to more than 10,000 people. It was one of two rival Khmer Empire capitals, the other being Angkor, which lies around 100 kilometers southwest of Koh Ker. But Koh Ker was the sole capital from 928 to 944 CE. Established by King Jayawarman, his sacred city was believed to be laid out on the basis of ancient Indian religious concepts of the universe. The new city demonstrated unconventional city planning, artistic expression, and construction technology, especially the use of very large monolithic stone blocks. But before we dive into the history of Koh Ker, let's talk about where it is. Koh Ker lies a 2.5-hour drive northeast of Siem Reap in the province of Previar, in an area that was heavily mined during the Cambodian Civil War. Around 1,000 people live in the surrounding villages, primarily making a living from agriculture and subsistence farming. They are among the poorest communities in Cambodia, and while tourism brings in some supplemental income for a very few of the families through local tour guide and park security guard opportunities, the low numbers of tourists in general is still too little to factor very much into the local economy. Most tourists do not make the added effort to go to Koh Ker, and yet it is very much worth the effort. But if you do go, please do use the local guide companies or local tour guides. Not only is it ethical, but it's also smart. You don't want to wander off the beaten track too far. Even though most of the area is demined, that still is not 100%. Speaking of mines, I recommend checking out the Apopo Humanitarian Demining Organization. You can visit them in Siem Reap. Through the joint efforts of the Cambodian Mine Action Center, UNESCO, and Apopo, more than 300,000 square meters around Koh Ker have been cleared of mines. How do they do that? Well, Apopo trains southern giant pouch rats from Tanzania, which are trained to sniff the mines out so they can be safely disarmed. These hero rats are accompanied by hero people, and you can support their work by virtually adopting a rat with a monthly stipend. Back to Koh Ker. Let's dive now into what you see when you get there. The official archaeological site is about 81 square kilometers, but much of that is forest and not cleared, so don't go wandering. Within that 81 square kilometers, you have a 35 square kilometer, which is marked by 50 sanctuaries. And then within that, you have the main 20 to 24 temples within roughly 4.5 square kilometers. Temples being clustered together as kind of an urban center is reminiscent of other cities of the Khmer Empire. But that, rather than a compact city where everything revolves around the urban center, it's more like a series of constellations with their brighter stars and their fainter stars. Namely, the core of the big important temples at the center fans out to a series of smaller temples and shrines distributed out across the landscape with lower and lower density populations, getting into more semi-rural areas, historically speaking. You enter the main monumental complex of Koh Ker Archaeological Park from the parking lot on the east side. That monumental complex is called Prasat Dome. When entering, you will immediately find the ruins of pieces of temples with beveled and pointed crenellations that run along the top of the remaining walls. As you continue among the ruins, you will notice something recurring among the architecture of the site. Big, beautiful stone balusters lining the interior of the windows. They are not just slabs of columns, but beveled and carved with a simple but effective pattern. The window is topped by, first, a series of heavy stones, and then by those crenellations at the very top. You can then pass by another series of ruins, the beautiful eastern entrance gateway, or Gopura, that has a decorative lintel just above the door. And if you look closely, there's also a scene being depicted on the triangular pediment just above it. On the left side, and along the cornice in general, you can clearly see a carved flower. 2 even! You will notice the 2 different colors of the rocks as well. That's because the builders used laterite and sandstone. Which is which? Well, the main wall section to the left of the door is built of that chunky, porous, red clayish laterite blocks, while the ornamental doorway, the lintel, and the pediment are all carved from the finer sandstone. Within Prasat Tom, the 2 starring attractions are called Prasat Kraham and the Prang, the double sanctuaries, in fact. After you pass that East Gopura, you can walk to the first of those attractions, the Red Temple, or Prasat Kraham. The Prasat Kraham is one of the many, many temples in the Prasat Tom complex, that ancient city center and defining landmark of the Koh Ker UNESCO World Heritage Site. The temple, with a 12-meter square platform and 17 meters high, is the largest tower at the Koh Ker site. It was built to house an iconic colossal sandstone dancing Shiva statue of about 6 meters high on a pedestal which was decorated with vegetal friezes and lions. That statue has been damaged over the millennia and is now in a museum. At the corners of the temple there are 4 other statues: the dancing Uma, Chamuda, Mahakala, and Nandikeshvara. Long abandonment, the impact of climate and nature, a series of civil wars, and looting activities made this temple structure unstable. Damaged, with cracks in the walls, brick detachment, deterioration, water penetration, and vegetation growth. In this photo, you can see that they are working to restore it. This little guy is a simha, a guardian lion sculpture. In Khmer architecture, these mythical lions are traditionally called singha, derived from the Sanskrit word for lion. He is positioned right at the base of the stone steps leading up into Prasat Kraham, protecting the gateway to the temple. Restoration is ongoing. Let's take a walk now around the outer enclosure wall and the ruins near the main entrance sequence of Prasat Tom, the principal temple complex at Koh Ker. We can take this opportunity to look at some of the trees and the vegetation that surrounds the site. The wall, as we follow it around, is actually marked by several different types of trees, including Lagerstromia caliculata, or the guava crepe myrtle. This is called Damsraulau in Khmer. This has to be one of my favorite trees in the region, just because of its very unique mottled flaky bark. I tried to do some research because when I looked up the name as on the label on the internet, it actually showed me a picture of a different tree. So I'm not quite sure what's the right name, but it's definitely a Lagerstromia. Look how amazing that bark is. It's so gorgeous. I really think it's one of the more striking trees I've ever seen and come across. And then a little bit further down, you can see this Karyotomitis, which is also known as the clustering fishtail palm. Evidently, those berries are not good for you. As you trace the old perimeter walls, you realize that this isn't just an archaeological wonder. It's a living, breathing ecosystem. Standing guard over these waters and these stones are the magnificent towering trees like the Koki Masao, also known as Hopea odorata. Belonging to the Dipterocarpaceae family, these massive hardwood giants are famous for their resilience, casting cool, deep shadows over the ancient pathways and over the moat that encircles the whole complex. The moat itself is about 32 meters wide and forms a protective boundary around the main eastern sanctuary of the complex. These ruins are encircled by these peaceful, reflective pools of water where that lone wooden rowboat sits moored to the shore. This mirror-like surface beautifully captures the vibrant green leaves and the blue skies. Back now along the walls, let's head back to the complex. On the way, we run into the remains of giant Naga balustrades. They're heavily weathered now, covered in lichens and moss, but you can still make out that distinct blocky style of the carving. These mythical serpent heads were meant to line the causeway, acting as the symbolic transition into that sacred ground. Naga are powerful, divine, or partly divine serpent-like beings that live under the earth, and they're often found, but not always, close to water. Water is of central significance throughout Southeast Asia, and these differences you can see are reflected in the water that is surrounding the complex, the moat, the barai that's nearby, and of course the ceremonial decorative pond as well. Here I am on the other side of Prasat Kraham now, the temple that they are restoring. Check out this gorgeous decoration. There used to be quite a lot of statues here, evidently. They look mostly like statues of the figures from the Hindu epics and the Vedic pantheon. This panel shows the images of 6 distinct stone statues in various condition. And here are the feet of another one. I think they've all been removed. Look, that looks like a little hippopotamus. Look at that gorgeous decoration. And I love these little window. So evidently there was a horse statue in here somewhere as well. They also had to remove that. You can see that there's so much damage. They are working on this as a proper archaeological site from the Prang jurisdiction, which is north of here. Currently we're not supposed to go there because it's the disputed territory between Thailand and Cambodia. And it does mean that the area north of here is restricted, but it's still part of the same jurisdiction. We're in the north. Look at the spider webs, lovely. We're in the north of Cambodia right now, but not the north that's within 20 kilometers of the border. So it's okay. Look at that, how gorgeous that green is. These buildings are just astonishing. And here you can always see this kind of red brick fire, thin bricks, right? Clearly made through firing. That you also see in a lot of Byzantine architecture, although I think here's much, much considerably older. I'd have to look up the dates again. I think about the times of when people would be, this was like an active place, and people would be walking through it. Probably maybe not even so much paying attention, because they'd be seeing it every day. I think it's kind of cool. Okay, gotta be careful of my footing here. This is not the normal way to walk. I made an error. There we go, back to safety. And
And then there are these amazing trees here. I looked up the name, and I will pass the sign on the way out, because of course I can't remember it. But I think they're gorgeous. I remember when I was reading about the Hittites way back when, and they always said things like, well, they would choose where to build their temples when they found natural things that seemed holy to them, like where springs of water and cups of trees and, important rocks were found together. And I feel like that might be something people do everywhere around the world, because I could see why this natural space. Can you hear the little guy? Oh, now you. I feel like if I was here and there was nothing here, I'd feel the need to build something here as well, because clearly it gives off quite a sacred feel that the building and the ruins just kind of amplifies. Wow. I think that's astonishing. My guide was like, oh no, you should go to the other place first. And I was like, So if this is this amazing, then frankly, the place he wants me to go must be astonishing. So here's a picture of the statue that they removed, probably to a museum someplace close by. Okay, now on to the next structure. It took quite a while to drive here from Siem Reap, so I'm glad it's so extensive. I always feel slightly embarrassed when it takes longer to get to a place than the time I actually spend at the place.
So here are just a few stills of the same path and route through the complex. And you can see a lot of the lichen growing on the walls, and the vegetation is really overrun, and yet you can still see a lot of the decoration and the beauty of the architecture and the artwork that the builders did. Okay, so let's go on to the main event, as it were, of the Prang, which is, of course, the pyramid. And these pyramids are said to be very similar and striking in their similarity to the pyramids in Mexico, in Quintana Roo. So let's take a journey on this pyramid.
Okay, the next place. Wow, okay, I can see why he said this was the most impressive part. A staircase, let's be careful. Hello! What's the name of this?
Koh Ker.
This is Koh Ker.
Yeah.
And that is called?
All Koh Ker.
Oh, so it's all Koh Ker. So what, does this have special name?
Yeah. Number one.
Number one Koh Ker? Okay. Wow, so this is the pyramid at Koh Ker. Amazing. I love these little things because they look like, I don't know, little gnomes, little garden gnomes. I feel like I could turn them into a dancing cartoon. This pyramid is really awesome. I like how it's a terraced pyramid. Koh Ker. Amazing, look at that. Very well preserved, I think. Not preserved, like maintained. It is clear that they care about it and they're doing their best. And it's also clear that they have park rangers because there are stations everywhere. Because this is part of a national park, I think. And it's clear that it's also like a place where the guides come. And I saw a guide come by with a Japanese group. He spoke fluent Japanese. He was not Japanese. He spoke fluent Japanese. So it's like they are trying to really highlight the heritage.
So let's talk about the heritage. Koh Ker exists because in the 10th century there was a major political shift and a succession crisis. The center of gravity for the Khmer Empire was always Angkor, There you had a king. His name was Yasovarman. He died. He had 2 sons. They took the throne in quick succession. But the Khmer Empire didn't have a rigid system of primogeniture. So Jayavarman, who was related through the maternal line, decided he had a stronger, more legitimate right to the throne. But instead of waging a direct war to capture Angkor, he just founded a new capital. He walked away, established the new capital 120 kilometers northeast, and effectively split the empire. For 7 years, he ruled the northern territories in parallel with his nephews, while they controlled the south. And then he just waited until both brothers died naturally, leaving him as the sole monarch. He built the capital basically to prove that the center of power was where the king was. But then eventually he passed away too. His son only ruled for a few years, and then the king after that decided, nah, we want to go back to Angkor, and he moved the court back to Angkor. Despite the king's moving the capital back to Angkor, there is still archaeological evidence that population still lived there for a long time after that. This pyramid was actually designed by the king to physically elevate the state's primary shrine above the surrounding jungle canopy, which is why you can see all the way around. It is 36 meters high and has 7 tiers and is made of sandstone. Unlike the typical concentric designs found in Angkor, this structure is built on a linear east-west axis, emphasizing an aggressive monumental scale.
This is home.
Okay, so let me find. Here we've got Garuda, I guess. Wow, I love this. It's so gorgeous.
So Garuda is a divine, semi-anthropomorphic creature. He's half human, half eagle. And he is often serving as like the vehicle for the god Vishnu.
So you see the video of this pyramid. It has it shows that there are like these big, I would call them like terraces, but see how wide they are? They're wide to create a very sturdy base. And it's supposedly about, the guard actually said it was 1,140 years old. See, I would call this very sacred space. Oh. Spotting the pyramids over the gate, over the fence, over the wall. And so across the road from the main Koh Ker complex is Prasat Srot. And this is smaller and cuter with little tiny decorations on the edges. See there. And this is also currently, as you can see, in restauro, clearly with limited funding actually. And I like how the trees just overgrow everything. That's so cool.
Let's move now to the Angkor National Museum in Siem Reap, where you can find a lot of the statues from the Koh Ker archaeological site. Most of the statues are religious, and they have large proportions, they're dynamic, and they're literally beautiful. The Khmer style from before is not really copied in the Koh Ker style. In fact, you can find an independent style as early as 932, which is about 4 years after the founding of the capital. There are two features of the style that I want to highlight that make it unique. The first is that they used a lot of sandstone to sculpt these statues. And the second is that they explored new themes, including exploring movement and dance poses, which was not something that was necessarily done in the Angkorian styles that preceded or followed the Koh Ker era. I hope you liked my little video on Koh Ker, and please check out some reading resources about the site and the history of the era, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye!